Like many members of the media, we're at the launch event for the Ram TRX. This is their biggest, baddest truck they've built since the SRT 10 with the V10. Now, we're only here for about 6 hours, so this isn't going to be a comprehensive video. It's just a taste of what this truck is, some of the technical detail, what it's like to drive off-road, which is what this is all about, and then some of its on-road manners. So let's get into it.
All right, Mark, we're in Lake Tahoe and we're setting off in the Ram TRX.
So that downhill kind of makes up for the fact that we're in elevation. So it's like we're in Illinois, technically. It feels and sounds, first impressions, if you're gonna compare this to a Raptor, which is really the only thing you're gonna compare it to, is this was the lost opportunity with Ford not putting a V8 in. And with the blower whine, this is super refined. It sounds good, but
it's quiet.
It's quiet. It's way more quiet than I thought it was gonna be. This is so refined that I don't know. Are people gonna like this?
It's not what I was expecting, right? I thought this would be the spiritual successor to the Viper truck, the SRT 10 Ram. And that thing was basically a barnyard animal with a V10. It was not refined. It was faster in a straight line. That thing hit 155 miles an hour, where this is more of a road vehicle. Its focus is off-road and Baja running. But as a street vehicle, and this is gonna be the part one of this video, it's kind of what you want in a expensive truck like this. The one we have is fully loaded, and it's $91,000 or $92,000.
Yeah, it's the price tag fully loaded is absolutely insane. So at that, you either want something that is ridiculous, or like this turns into like a luxury truck with a high horsepower V8, tons of torque. On the road, this is super compliant. You almost forget that you're in a truck. There are certain scenarios you can't hide body on frame, you can't hide all of that, but this, it's mind-blowing how relaxed and quiet it is and comfortable as a daily driver. We're going to get into how it has that dual personality, and that's something that FCA themselves or Ram is trying to explain, that it can go from this to something that is more extreme or more hardcore than a Raptor, and we'll talk about that soon.
Yeah, so let's talk about the engineering first while we're on road, while we have a little more time to be relaxed. So this is a radically changed ladder chassis from the Ram. They basically changed about 70% of the components on it to deal with the abuse that this thing can take off-road. The uprights, the shock towers, all of that have been dramatically strengthened and refined. This, in fact, has so much wheel travel in the back, they struggled finding a spring manufacturer that could create a spring that large.
Yeah, and because this does not use leaf springs in the back, they're using coil springs. And one of the other things during their initial testing or tuning, they were trying to get progressive spring rates, and that was something that they could not get made by their spring suppliers. They could not get a progressively wound spring with the size that they wanted, so they had to settle for a single rate spring, and that's what's in here. Now, in terms of damping, most of products like this, high performance products, everything is about the dampers. So the Bilstein dampers have huge external reservoirs. They are enormous. They can change their flow rate, they can change compression and rebound rates. They are electronically controlled as well through the drive modes. So you have Baja, you have rocks and ruts, you have sport, and you have normal, which is auto, and that's how most people are going to drive this in automatic. When you're the main difference between sport and Baja is sport goes from one extreme. It's constantly changing the shocks to give you better control of the body. When you're in Baja, the shocks essentially go off give you the most wheel articulation, give you the most wheel travel without the shocks impeding the stroke.
And they will still firm up when they reach basically the point where they're supposed to bottom out.
Correct.
So it'll give you the body control you need when you jump this truck. The drivetrain in this is largely unchanged from the Jeep Trackhawk. So it has the same transmission, identical. It obviously now has a transfer case, which is a dramatically strengthened transfer case from the regular Ram.
And they made some internal changes to the transfer case for torque holding ability. They also changed the torque converter on the transmission, even though it's the same torque flight, the ZF gearbox that you're getting in all the Hellcats. They did change the torque converter. They did have to change the oil pan.
Yes.
They had to put a different oil pan in with baffling to handle the G-force and the upward and downwards angles that this is going to be at. And they moved the alternator up to help with the water fording ability. So you can, I think it's like 30-something inches.
Yeah, I think it's 32 inches, which is...
It's nuts.
Yeah,
but,
nuts.
So those were the two main mechanical changes.
The airbox is a little bit different as well.
Correct. They have a different air filtration system so it can absorb and hold more rocks and dust without contaminating the engine. But the core of the engine structure is the same as what you get in the Hellcat. The main difference is they had to slightly change the tuning because it's a new intake, a new exhaust, but other than that, the mappings are almost entirely the same.
Yep. So with that, Mark, let's head to the off-road park and really try to demonstrate what this truck is really about.
Yeah, exactly. That's what people care about.
All right.
So this is what it's like taking a TRX. Oh, if I didn't have to take a shit, this thing's gonna jar it loose now.
My God.
I can't wait to do this to my own truck. Oh
my
God, this is brutal. People like doing this? People actually do this shit, dude? Dude, I hope they have a soy latte stand at the end of this because I'm gonna need to cool off. This guy.
My God.
Oh.
Well, Mark, this is what it's like to drive a TRX off-road.
God, man.
I'm gonna need to see a chiropractor after this. This is more of the low-speed off-roading segment they have us doing here at the T-Rex event. However, I did have some time a little earlier to finally live a childhood dream of mine and jumping a truck.
Yeah, I saw it. I'm sure you were smiling ear to ear.
And I will say, at speed, this thing is incredibly impressive. And the amount of abuse that these things can take. We're the last wave at this press event, and
They've told us that all these trucks have made it all the way through a couple, what has it been, a couple weeks?
yeah, which is, mind-blowing to say the least.
If I could get all-wheel drive on my Civic, I could do the same thing. Oh my God. I mean, I guess you would need this if you're angry and you run a ranch and that cow got away from you again.
And I can't see because of the dust. Yeah, this is like what it's like to drive a Tonka truck when you were a kid. You're like, oh God. Oh my God.
Dude. I mean, I got to admit, it's amazing that human ingenuity has created such a machine to go over pointless routes like this to go to nowhere.
I will say, given what this thing is like to drive on the street and how civilized it is, almost, I don't want to call it boring. Again, you and I have a
different skewed perception of what excitement is.
Yeah, this, for what it can do when you take it off-road, and the fact that you have one of the best sounding engines ever, and something that is genuinely
like modern,
modern American V8s. It makes up for all the deficiencies the Raptor has.
Well, the engine's a huge part, but it's really strange because this thing is so obscenely like almost bland on the street that it's amazing that this thing's so capable out here like this.
Yeah, it's
But this is the same boner kill that you get with a track car, right? You have this high performance car that you're stuck on the street with, and then when you finally get out here and have a little bit of fun with this thing, you're like, oh man, I gotta have one.
Yeah, I mean, from the driver's seat, this point in time, Mark, there aren't a lot of negatives. I can tell you that. So with that, Mark, you want to head into the final thoughts?
Yeah, let's do that, because I gotta take a shit. Final thoughts on the TRX, some will call it the T-Rex. There is about 15 more hours of technical information I can spew on you, but I'll save it for the next video when we have a press car, so look forward to that. The main thing, this is not just a Ram that has been tarted up and got a Hellcat engine put in it. We were able to talk to Dan, the drivetrain engineer who's been at Chrysler or FCA for about 21 years. And we also talked to Ryan, the interior designer, interior engineer for this, to learn everything we needed to know. So here it is. Some will say this is completely unnecessary. It gets poor fuel economy between 10 and 12 miles per gallon. It's got over 700 horsepower. It can do jumps and go off-roading. It's just indicative of where we're at in terms of the car and truck market. Excess. And you know what? That's what makes this thing special. It's no different than a sports car, an exotic car that can go 200 miles an hour. You can't use all of it, but it is so remarkable from an engineering standpoint that they can make this happen. And that's where I'm gonna lead into. It is something special when you can take a truck like the TRX, and you can drive on the highway, and you have acoustic front laminated glass, windshield, and side windows. You have active noise cancellation that cancels out unwanted frequencies from the engine and exhaust. And it is so comfortable, it feels like a luxury truck. You can then go on an off-road or on an off-road park and jump this thing. I mean, it is just incredible how it can do two things. And all the engineering that went into that to make that work is what's most impressive to me. So here's some of the things that they've done. This is, again, not just a regular Ram. They had bought over five or six Ford Raptors to test and find out failure points. Then they were able to take their own Ram product and see all these little areas like the front shock towers or spring perches, parts of the frame that could potentially bend or needed rigidity added to it, and they added all the material that they needed. Then they did torture testing on the drivetrain, so it's not just a regular Hellcat engine pulled out of a Hellcat. They had to change the oil pan, they had to change some cooling things with it, and of course moving the alternator up. But again, there's so many little things we'll talk about later, but the big change here is interior space. I constantly harp on Chrysler, FCA, Dodge, whatever, about their interior quality. And in terms of the truck space, nobody else is doing it better. The attention to detail is all there now. The seats are slightly different for the TRX. You have a regular mechanical shifter there instead of a dial digi-shift. You now have a heads-up display. The infotainment electronics, you can argue the size of the screen, but the 360 cameras for off-roading are great. I mean, all of the things are put together so well that if you have a warranty or you lease this thing, if you can even lease it, it's gonna make you so friggin' happy to drive this if you love trucks. It is just so amazing. The V8 just brings out the whole experience, unlike the Raptor, and that was one of the biggest disappointments with the new one. They shit the bed on that, putting a 6-cylinder in there, and you know, if you don't like that, you're gonna love this. The last thing is, do you want to buy it? Well, if you are a Ram man, of course you're going to want to buy it, and you'll probably even pay more with the dealer markups initially. It is a special product, but again, we're going to go over this more in detail later on. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.